Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this knowledge stream today. This fantastically sunny day here in Lund on the last day of May. Now, for those of you who've joined our knowledge streams before, you understand a little bit of how this is going to look. But for those of you that haven't, we're basically going to kick off with a short presentation. Then we're going to move into a moderated discussion before we let you all in to ask any questions that you might have. Our previous knowledge streams featuring Troy Hunt and Dylan Beatty are available to find on our YouTube channel, so you can pop in there and find it. Before I introduce our speaker, I'm just going to let you know that if you have any questions that come up that you want answering, just pop them in the comments, and also there'll be a poll coming up, so don't forget to get your opinions heard in that poll there. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our guest here today. He fantastically held a Knowledge Evolve workshop for us last week. So let's welcome him in. Oh, it's Monday. Welcome him in. Good morning to you, Joakim Sundén.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. For those of you that don't know, Joakim is a consultant at a consultant agency called Crisp, and he's a speaker, a teacher, and an Agile expert and coach. Anything you'd like to add to that, Joakim?
No, not really.
No? Okay. Well, then I think we should just kick it all off now. So I'm going to leave the microphone over to you.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to dive right into it and tell you a little bit of a story. So 3 years ago, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I still answered. I do that, coming from the phone age. And it turned out to be an executive from one of the biggest telcos in the world, the Swedish business unit from one of the biggest telcos in the world. And he said to me that, Joakim, we have a problem. All right, interesting. I'm listening. I'm not sure how you got my number, but I'll hear you out. Our core IT systems crashed. Wow, that sounds really bad. But it's been quite some time since I touched code, even though I used to be a developer. And we found that when we tried to solve this problem, we've outsourced most of our IT development, and we didn't have the expertise in-house to fix it. And we weren't sure whether the outsourced partners were to blame or what had gone wrong, so we didn't really understand how to fix the problem. All right, still listening? Well, we realized that through the outsourcing, we now have ended up with an organization with too many coordinators and very few engineers. Okay, so I guess the IT crash isn't the only thing that's challenging for you then? Well, no, actually, it seems like we have replanning upon replanning. People in the organization have no idea what's being developed, when it will be done. There's no transparency. We don't understand what's going on. We feel like we've kind of lost control of our IT development. Okay, now I start to see that as Jerry Weinberg taught us, everything's a people problem, really. This is something I can work with. Okay, what else? Well, it turned out that we have a really unhealthy organization. We brought in McKinsey and we did this organizational health index, and the closer you work to IT, the worse it was. People were really not doing well, and they were stressed out, and it is not good at all. We're like at the bottom in the organization, in IT, in the global organization, we're at the bottom. Oh, nice. Now I'm intrigued, because this is actually what I see as my mission in the world of work, to help people become more engaged at work, because there's so many people who show up to work, which is a big part of your life, and just disengage and are not happy. If I can be in a position where I can help change this and make it more pleasant, even by just a tiny fraction, to come to work, that's something we're really willing to help with. But what else? Well, then we have this little thing that Google is coming. They've reached out to all the telcos and said, we want to have a piece of this. All you need to supply us with is 3 APIs. We'll figure out the rest. We'll handle the customer interaction. No worry, you can still do all the very expensive and boring, infrastructure and tech and so on. And we'll just take over the customer bit. Wow, no, that's a serious threat. So this is really something I can work with. We have a sense of urgency. I'd say these days, I probably wouldn't be involved in helping a lean agile transformation unless there is a real sense of urgency. So without a burning platform or a really proactive leadership who can feel this urgency, there's a big risk that any transformation that you try will kind of peter out or only give limited effects and maybe not even be sustained over time. But if you're really feeling the threat, then I think people will be much more on board and really able to do things. So that's the first of my lessons from the trenches. So this talk is called Agile Transformations using the Spotify model, but it might as well be any scaled Agile approach or Agile at scale approach. And these are some lessons from the trenches, having been part of a few lean Agile transformations. So you already heard a little bit about me. I'm with Crisp, a boutique consultancy, as I like to say, 30 people, mainly in Stockholm, mainly in Sweden. And this talk will be story-based mainly. I will use that as an outline of one of the clients that I worked with for 2 years almost, Telenor. I'm currently helping Länsförsäkringar, and I've been with a bunch of other companies. I also happen to be the co-author of Kanban in Action. It's available in Japanese and Chinese and even simplified Chinese, if Chinese is too tricky for you. So anyway, these lessons based on Telenor Agile transformation journey that I was part of and helping, and also work with other clients. So it's not just one anecdotal story, but actually based on several different perspectives, and also from having run over 30, 40 now Agile at scale inspired by Spotify, public and in-house courses and follow-up workshops and conversations, like the one I did last week with you at 1337. And also experience from my colleagues at Crisp and books and articles and blogs and conversations. So I've been working with lean Agile transformations for at least 10 years. And particularly the Spotify model, since I was one of the coaches at Spotify in 2011 who actually developed what has later been known as the Spotify model or Spotify approach to Agile at scale. So another lesson is bring in help, just like this executive did when he was calling me. So if you're in an organization that has a sense of urgency around really making a transformation from a traditional bureaucratic plan-driven organization into a lean agile organization, well, it's likely that you don't have the competence in-house to be able to help you. What does this look like? What are the common pitfalls? What should we be focusing our efforts? How do you do this? What have others done? What have we tried? And because if you had that competence, well, you would probably be a lean agile organization or well on your way. Maybe you have some pockets, maybe you have some people, but you probably could use an experienced external perspective from people who have done this before. But at the same time, you should definitely don't get too dependent on the outside help. You need to develop your own capabilities too. This lean agile transformation, it's not something that you're done with in a few months or even a time boxed project like, 1 year, then we're going to focus on something different. You will need a capability to keep the transformation going, to keep striving towards a lean agile culture and all that means. This is work that will never be done, and it's much, much bigger than you might realize from the get-go. And if you just bring in help, with the idea that they will now, help you with training, get things going, help you with our org design, and then you're kind of done. To me, no, that's where the journey actually starts, and that's when a lot of organizations historically, that's when they end the engagement with consultants and they haven't developed their capability. They have just had their people go through some trainings and so on. So identify people in your organization who can become lean agile leaders, agile coaches, and develop that from the first day. Use the help you bring in to also develop the capability. Let them help you help yourself. And engage everyone. It's not just IT. It's not just a project. A very common mistake in the past is that, okay, this is starting in IT. There's some kind of, people aren't happy with how IT is delivering. Let's do yet another reorg, which means that this is a project where we just make the new organizational design. Maybe it's mainly in IT. You think that it's just introducing some new practices and a new work method, but it's not. And this can't also be constructed by managers and consultants and then implemented. You need to have people feel that they have co-created a solution. This makes them feel 5 times more ownership than those who are told the solution. This nugget is from the book Beyond Performance 2.0, which is my most recent favorite book on change management or leading change. I can really recommend it. And then another lesson, develop vision and principles. So why are we doing this change? What's the whole point? Connected to this sense of urgency that you have made sure that you have. So what are we striving for? What are we trying to get? Again, from the book Beyond Performance, 3,000 executives were asked, if your company undertook the change program again, what would you do differently? 48% said set clearer targets. And change programs with clearly defined aspirations for performance and org health are 3 times more likely to succeed than when neither is defined. So this is important. And I also find that, if you're doing, we're now going to do a lean agile transformation. We're going to start to use SAFe or Scrum or whatever. We start, training people and teaching them. And it's like, why? Why are we doing that? Some people won't like it. Some people want to go back to the old ways. Some don't see the point. Why this agile? Isn't it just a fad? And you can have people resist, and maybe for good reason. But if you're clear on what we're trying to do, we want to become a more innovative company. We need to be more customer focused. We need to, really address these quality issues. We want more engaged people in the workplace. And we think that this lean agile way of working is a one way of getting there. Remember, it's not the goal. It's a means to an end. It's very difficult for people to take, to fight that. No, I don't think we should be more innovative. No, I don't want people to be more engaged and healthy at work. And also, if people really understand this and buy into that vision and these principles, there's no stopping them from, coming up with lots of great ways of getting there that you can see for yourself. That goes beyond, training and reorganization and so on. But you should also do this iteratively. So it probably needs to be starting at the top. Maybe it's actually already started at the bottom somehow. You've seen some teams in IT gone agile and so on. But the transformation journey needs support from the top. So start crafting this vision, the reason why you're doing it, but also pay attention when you talk about it. What are people saying? We need double loop learning, not only learn whether our vision is communicated and we're reaching the effects that we want, but also listen to, do we need to adjust, tweak, or change the vision? And that will feel that people are really, people feel that they are really listened to and then can be part of the change journey rather than that being something that they are subjugated to. And I think that, it's all lean agile transformation. It's all about increasing autonomy, giving people empowering teams and people and give them the opportunity to make choices and take bigger ownership and find the right solution based on their context. And the idea that you would do a change towards that way of working in a top-down, rolling it out, implementing it. This is how you're going to do it. That's kind of ironic, right? So another lesson, understand where you are. As Einstein said, if I had only 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. Well, Einstein maybe didn't say that. It's hard these days to know who actually said what, but it's a good quote. So one thing that we did at Telenor was going around to trying to really understand the problem, asking people where is the pain, what is it that's not working, what are you unhappy with the current situation, and then started putting that into a picture that we brought to even more people, and they would feedback and see if they recognize themselves in this picture. Not only is this communicating a better understanding throughout the organization, while at the same time everyone feels they contribute to the problem definition, but also it means once you're starting to come up with solutions, you're starting with the lean agile transformation, you're training people and so on, it will be much more easy to be able to point to the problems and the understanding that they have co-created and say, we're addressing this problem. As all of you said, this is time consuming, this is happening. If you're only coming there and saying, hey, we're going to do this lean agile thing and we're going to do Scrum and whatever, because we're too slow or quality sucks, you might actually step on people's toes and they feel blamed and won't recognize themselves in this problem description. So it's likely that you're not starting from scratch. As the Heath brothers put it so nicely in their book, Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, there are these bright spots, as they call it, in an organization. Probably some things that are already going pretty well. At Telenor, we had several cross-functional agile teams already doing good work. In one part of the organization, we had a big project Kanban board that had really done wonders on visualizing and having people meet around it and understand what was going on and what they needed to focus their efforts on. Another part of the organization had a big room planning where everyone in the department got together a day every quarter to do some planning and really resolve dependencies and so on together. We had agile teams in digital channels who were already converging line organizations on value streams, which is a way of saying that they were starting to shape reporting lines and so on after the way that they're actually working towards the customer. And your organization probably have these as well. And this will show that we've already come some part of the journey. So we're not really starting from scratch. We have strength to build on. You can show that this is actually working in our organization. It's not something we're doing because management bought it from a couple of consultants or everyone else is doing it. We're already doing it and it's working for us. And this is also going to be good against the not invented here syndrome, which sure, that probably works in another organization, but we're so special and unique, so it won't work for us. Well, it's already working. So quite a few customers I've worked with and also my colleagues share this experiences. And when you start doing this, and if you're schooled and used to working in a waterfall project world, it's easy to fall into the trap of value stream analysis paralysis. You're also maybe used to doing this big reorgs once every 2, 3, 4 years, and where you really need to get it right. And then people start saying, oh, we need to organize around value streams and customer focus, but there are so many different ways you could go about that. So it's easier to get stuck in endless conversation on should we do it on this direction or that direction or from that perspective, or what is really the value, where is the customer focus? No, I think we should do this and that. And it's so easy to get stuck there and not really get going. So my biggest advice here is the most important thing is to get people together in the same teams and teams together in the same tribe or agile release train or department, or whatever you want to call it, that have dependencies to each other, that need each other to be able to release things to the customer. Whatever they need to, whoever needs to be together in order to be able to release actual solutions to people for feedback, put them together to the largest extent possible. You're not going to get it right. There is no right. So just get something going and then learn from that. Connected to the next lesson, which is taking a long-term orientation and change iteratively. This will take time. You won't get it right from the start. So don't kid yourself that's going to be the case. So this also means setting the organization up for what I like to call lean, agile change governance, so that you're going into it with the mindset that we will need to constantly tweak this. Unfortunately, I've seen cases where when this is initiated with top management support and you're banging the big drum and doing this big change, and there's a communication and a lot of momentum and so on, typically in the beginning, and then you're doing kind of the biggest change in reporting lines and organizational structures and so on. And the focus of top management and others will now start to shift away to something else or the next big thing that they need to do. And if you haven't been clear of putting authority and mandate in tribes, in agile release trains, in departments to continuously tweak this, change this, understand, did we actually get the effects of the organizational change that we wanted? Or how do we need to keep tweaking and keep changing? If you don't have that mandate and authority, if you have to push things up to management who has now kind of maybe shifted their attention elsewhere, and maybe you have this historical, we're doing reorgs every other 3 years, and let's just sit calm and stay calm in the boat. We just went through all this hassle of a big reorg. Let's not touch it again at least 3 years. Then there's a risk that you actually won't be able to tweak and change it continually. So build that change governance in from the start, foresee it, prepare for it. And SAFe is great, less is great. DAD, a lean enterprise book from Just Humble and others, Scale, Scrum, Spotify model. But these frameworks, they are toolboxes really. It's very unlikely that someone has been able to describe a general solution approach in big detail like SAFe that will exactly fit where you are, your company, your culture, your situation. And it might feel comfortable to people in manager positions to say, wow, this is a true and tested framework. Who can blame me for applying this straight out of the book, right? As the old ad was, no one ever got fired for going with IBM. No one ever got fired for choosing SAFe. I guess is the approach to lean agile transformations now. But it's unlikely that the package deal is going to be a perfect fit. So use them as toolboxes. There's lots of golden nuggets and nice things in here. Lots of good answers to problems that you're having probably. But use them wisely. I'll try to understand how will this actually work with our context. What are we hoping to get out of it? And how can we actually evaluate that we're getting that? And respect and leverage the legacy. Partner with HR and others to build on and further develop existing leadership profiles, training, values, cultures, and so on. Be a yes and coach instead of no but. So what I mean with this? Well, I've seen several transformations where, well, especially if you buy the package, if you buy SAFe, so to speak, and you come in with all of this training and leading SAFe and so on. And it says we now have the 4 SAFe core values, the 4 agile values, the 12 principles, the 10 SAFe principles, the lean house, and lean agile leadership principles. So this is how we're going to do it. And people are probably going to feel that, wait, what? We already have company values. We already have leadership profiles. We have this culture initiative that we've been working on for years. How does that all relate to all of these things that you're now talking about? If you only brought in external trainers, they're just going to say, well, I don't know. I don't know your organization. I don't know how that relates. But never mind, because this is a new thing. This is you're out with the old and in with the new. You need to change. The traditional isn't good enough. You need the new things. But realistically, people have been keeping up with things, especially in leadership development and so on. All modern leadership development is very much focused around similar values as lean agile leadership, I'd say. So how can we instead of feeling that something that from the HR's point of view, for instance, is probably initiated in IT, is now suddenly changing and transforming how they are going to approach their job of developing leaders in the rest of the organization. Not only will you be stepping on their toes and ignoring a lot of powerful already existing values and training and so on, but you run the risk of creating an adversary where you could have a great partner in actually accomplishing things with this lean agile transformation. So switching a little bit from having talked about how to approach this change journey and doing it to what we actually did. So one thing that was really important, I think, with the Telenor journey was integrating business and IT through mission-based tribes. So you can substitute tribes with agile release trains or large-scale Scrum requirement areas or what have you. But the point of it being that a team of teams that rally around a common shared focus, ideally a clear business mission. We really believed in having this mission-based, and I believe that you should try to do the same thing if any other approach, whether it's safe or something else. Meaning that it's clear to the people in the tribe or agile release train, what are we trying to accomplish together? What are we doing for the customer and potentially the end user? And then integrating business and IT. We brought in product owners in every squad from the business. A product owner tribe lead together with the IT tribe lead running the tribe, so to speak, having a shared responsibility for the tribe. And this were people with a mandate and authority that people trusted from the business side, so that they would now trust them to make decisions on content. We can't just give them goals and missions. We have our own people in there guiding, helping, and prioritizing and making decisions. So we can trust the tribes to have more autonomy. And we need to get away from the idea that someone is thinking things up in business and then IT deliver. We need to work together and much more closely together. I used to say that worst case scenario, you now have a hostage from the business in IT, so they can't be as upset or mad at you. That's a joke, of course, but there's some truth to it, I guess. But ideally, and what I've seen happen is that once we get this closer collaboration with business and IT, business people will now start driving changes within their organizations. They have one leg in each. So realizing that, wow, we can actually change a little bit direction every 2 weeks in sprint plannings and so on. We can definitely change direction every quarter, every 10 weeks in these big room plannings or PA plannings. But we're still in our business department doing these longer projects, planning 1 year out and so on. We're missing an opportunity. We need to adjust. We need to be more iterative and be thinking more incrementally. And connected to that, I think this is an often missed opportunity, developing and sustaining a tribal unity. So most people understand the idea of team building in a team and building a sense of team. I would say tribal unity is about building a sense of team in a team of teams, in a tribe, in an agile release train. It's all about how do we increase our impact and still support people feeling like they have access, are part of establishing direction, are autonomous and trusted, and have a strong sense of relatedness. If we can build a belonging to this tribe where we have a joint mission, it will be much easier to ask each other for help and also actually get that help. And this is one of the most missed things with the Spotify model in my mind, that really building this tribal unity together, not just having the tribe be an administrative unit. And another misunderstood concept of the Spotify model and the missed opportunity is the autonomous squad. Well, autonomy to a lot of people outside of Spotify seems to mean we're able to release independently. We aren't able to do that now because of how we're set up with project teams and legacy systems and specialization. So we need to combines lots of different people and lots of different teams to be able to even release something. So they often say that autonomy, that's when we can release things independently from one team, or kind of independently. But that's just the entry level at Spotify. With autonomy, we mean that the team is involved in actually making decisions. What should we be doing? What should we be working on? It's the team's responsibility to find out, are we working on the right things? Given our mission, clear metrics, we can choose together what to be working on. And not a lot has been written about this from a Spotify point of view, but you're lucky because Marty Kagan of the Silicon Valley product group, who has been a big product influencer in a decade or two in Silicon Valley. He wrote the book Inspired. He recently came out with Empowered. He talks about it in terms of empowered product team. And this is exactly the autonomous squad of Spotify. So you can check that out, or the blog post, or the blog where you have the link there, if you want to learn more on what an autonomous squad or an empowered product team is. But a little bit, I could say that it's all about this. Jeff Patton created this picture, one of you could say Marty Kagan's disciples, that I brought in 2011 already at Spotify to do a class for all the product owners and engineering managers and designers, when we still could fit all of them into a room at Spotify. So this kind of shaped a lot how we viewed things. So there's a lot of things you can see about users' needs and the current situation, the now reality, problems and opportunities, which leads you to have a lot of ideas. Oh, if we build this product or create this feature or make this enhancement, people will be happier, more people will use us, people will upgrade to subscriptions or whatever it is you're selling. So let's start translating these to specifications and requirements so that we can get going on developing them. And then we hand it over to IT, because we typically have this separation of someone who is thinking up the ideas and understanding the needs, and someone else to implement it. Once they start implementing it, which typically takes a lot of time in a traditional setup, they don't ask questions of whether are we actually changing the world? Are users now happier? Are we getting more subscribers? The outcome, what you really want to maximize, it's someone else's responsibility. And this is what I believe is leading to a lot, probably the biggest waste in software development organizations today, this artificial division between thinking it up and implementing it. And then by that necessarily losing sight of, are we doing the right thing? But if we can move from opinions to data, if we can get the teams to avoid, we're working on X because Sam said it's important, we're done when Sam is okay with it, and give them instead the tools and the work practices to incrementally and iteratively decide that we're working on X because we think it's going to give impact Y, which matters to Telenor because of Z. We're done when the metrics have moved. This changes the whole prioritization and decision from HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion, to actual data, and leaves the teams with a possibility to be engaged and take responsibility for what are we doing and is it the right thing. This means that product owners also need to be collaborative leaders who facilitate that all these perspectives are integrated. The product perspective of what's valuable, understanding how the organization makes money and becomes better. What's usable, the design, user research perspective on understanding the users and really identifying the needs, which goes far beyond just listening to what they say they want. The Henry Ford, if I would have listened to my customers, they would have said faster horses. So it's understanding the needs and coming up with something that's valuable. And then you definitely need to understand the feasible aspect. How does this fit with other solutions? What do we have that we can actually repurpose and already use for in innovative ways? What are the tech trends on the horizon that we can actually use to solve these problems or build these successful products? And it also means that we need to develop our developers to get agile engineering skills, to not just be there to code and ship, but actually take an active interest understand the customer, understand the domain, understand the systems and what we can do for them. And this is one benefit of creating these long-lasting, stable, agile teams where you gather this knowledge and experience and gel together, and where the developers can take a much more active role in working together with business, product owner, user research, and understanding what should we do next, and how can we test it. And as you can see here from the Telenor material that I copied, it's our most important role. And that is pointed out because that's, as we saw in the telephone conversation in the beginning with the outsourcing and so on, development engineers had not been the most important role. And this is something you want to change. Because if we want to be able to leverage this lean agile way of working, if we want to be able to explore together, then developers need to be engaged. And we need to get developers really in touch with our values, our goals, our customers, and their needs. Leading to the next lesson, prepare to insource. And at Telenor and other places, it's one of the things that we heard early on in the lean agile transformation. This is not about the outsourcing. This is still an important strategy, and we still believe that this is possible. And then you start talking to your outsourcing partners, and you realize and understand that just the setup and the contract and the way that you really need to share, not share responsibilities, but actually divide them. One of the principles of the Agile Manifesto is customer collaboration over contract negotiation, but it's almost impossible to really collaborate with customer focus with an outsourced partner. And also you realize that if we want our developers to be these thinkers working together with business and IT in harmony, integrated, we need to develop their skills, their interests. We want these stable teams where they really understand the customer. Is that something that we want to develop with our outsourced partners, developers? Or is it something we want to do with our own employees? I think the answer is obvious. And this is also why the chapter model and Spotify's model has become so popular, because this is a way of saying, well, the managers are responsible for one knowledge domain, one manager for backend, one for front end, maybe one for QA, because this allows companies that are doing lean agile transformations to rebuild this competency and this engineering culture that is needed to really attract people to be able to rebuild the development again. And this also means that the managers need to be much more of a servant leader. Instead of being the leader as an expert, assigning work, coordinating work, running around and representing people and teams and maybe coordinating projects, being the answer person, you have to be a catalyst. You have to ask yourself, how can we solve these problems in a way that commits, that increases the employees' commitment and capability for the future? How can I develop them to actually be solving these things themselves? But that's probably a whole course around that. This was the potluck is also a missing part that we found that was that we used at Spotify, that I was not sure how important it would be outside of it, but it seems that for a lean agile transformation, this could be the missing piece to get the new managers, chapter leads, product owners, and Scrum Masters to figure out how they can actually collaborate with the goal of the squad's best in mind, or team. Potluck is product owner, team lead, agile coach, but it could be product owner, engineering manager, Scrum Master, squad trio, team trio. So this is a leadership, not a leadership team. It's a team behind the scenes who are working to support the team. It turns out that in several transformations, the Scrum Master might be junior people new to the role, probably, who don't understand all the time what they should be doing or how. The product owner, there seems to be an overlap. Am I responsible for the sprint planning? Is the Scrum Master? The manager says, okay, we now have a product owner and Scrum Master. What exactly is my role in the team? And they seem to resort to what you do in big bureaucratic organizations, which is, what does the role description say? What is my responsibility? I have to talk to a manager, read the specification. Instead, what if you just met once a week, all the three of you together, with your shared responsibility of actually creating high-performing teams? If you can get that as your shared goal, and then you will start figuring out, you will start to have a platform where you can talk about and have this clear shared goal of a high-performing squad together. And this will be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, I promise you. So, starting to come to the end here. So once you have these autonomous squads, you have your tribes, you're starting to get really good at delivering incremental and iteratively, and really trying to understand, are we doing the right things, interfacing with customers, users on a regular basis. But if you're still stuck in an organization that hands you 1 or 2 year projects, that insists on doing a lot of pre-studies and designing the requirements up front, then you're going to have very limited leverage of this autonomy and lean agile way of working. So instead, how can you shift to a lean agile budgeting as quickly as possible, where you basically have a portfolio of different tribes or agile release trains, and you use the lever of, okay, if we want to double down on one type of business, we increase the size of that tribe long term. If we want to save, go a little bit easier in another area, we dial that down. So you really manage a portfolio of different missions through tribes and agile release trains and set goals for them, instead of managing a portfolio of projects where you have made decisions about the content and so on way too early, and paint yourself into a corner where you can change things easily as you go and as you learn more. And then use lean portfolio management to work together from all the different tribes. There's something called cross-tribe alignment at Telenor. And this is key, just putting everyone together every week to constantly monitor and sort out, are we doing the right things? Do we have issues? Do we have problems? Do we have prioritization conflicts that we need to resolve? But there's a lot of this written about this online, and actually Scaled Agile Framework Safe site has a lot of good information around lean portfolio management practices, I'd say. And then use objectives and key results for aligned autonomy. OKR has been the hype these days, goal-driven quarterly approach, where you give a lot of you have a lot of back and forth between the different levels and different peers to together synchronizing your understanding of strategy between the teams and with different levels, having teams on the ground inform top-level strategy. I think OKRs can be a splendid tool to do that, to really have goal and mission-driven teams and tribes where the people can figure out what exactly do we need to do to reach these goals. We can leave that up to them. And then use planning season for aligned autonomy. Not going to go into a lot of detail, but like SAFE does, we use this with the Spotify model as well to have these 2-day planning events where you get together with all the tribes, planning and understanding and meeting and resolving dependencies. But the lesson here is really that when we did this with Telenor, we started with 5 tribes who got together in the cafeteria, and pretty soon there were 3 more tribes. And now people started noticing, wow, there's some big event in the cafeteria every 3 months or so. That seems really important. The CEO is there, the CMO, the CIO, the CTO. And I keep hearing that if I want something done, I need to get it into the big room planning. And then we want in on this too. And more people from a non-IT related parts of the company came and said, we've started a tribe. Like, why? You don't even do development. Well, we heard that that's our chance to get a seat at the table. We also want to be in this big room planning where a lot of important decisions seems to be made. So this, I'd never seen the planning season or peer planning in this light before, that it's kind of a marketing event for the transformation. It became almost like a vortex that sucked other parts of the company into it, we also want to transform. Okay, we are prepared to work iteratively and incrementally in 10 weeks periods. At the end, we were 68 squads doing this big room planning at the same time in the cafeteria. Of course, then spread out in the breakout sessions. Visualizing it all in a big brown paper, continuously meeting in the cross-tribe alignment, lean portfolio management to keep track on the things that we did on the dependencies and the joint plans and so on. All right, so how did it go? Well, these are some numbers. We reduced the cycle time from 170 to 27 days for a certain type of product changes. The time spent on development, getting away from all the coordinators and getting more people actually coding and engineering, increased from 25 to 48%. Overhead in the form of administration and project coordination and so on reduced from 41 to 32%. Still a lot, but hey, it's a big change. And the employee engagement index for IT's most effective increased from 22%, worst in class, to 58% from 2017 to 2019. So this is the crown of it all to me. As I said, my mission is to make it more fun and engaging for people to go to work every day. And this is really astonishing numbers. The company who did this survey, they've never seen this rise. The Telenor Group people started noticing, what have you been doing? What's behind these amazing numbers? So I think this is really showing the promise and the power of lean agile transformation to really engage people in the workplace. And when Telenor was invited to at Adobe's conference, they said, out of all our customers we have in Nordics, Telenor Sweden has the strongest momentum in their digital transformation. We will struggle to find comparable companies in Europe. And there were companies from all over the world visiting Telenor to learn how they've been doing and how they've accomplished these things. Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop there. Sorry, a little bit long. I get carried away.
Thank you, Joakim. I understand why it's easy to get carried away when you're passionate about something. So I'm sure a lot of you who've been watching there have got many questions that have popped up. So make sure to just whack it in the comments section. I don't know why I'm pointing down. I've seen other cool YouTubers do it. So pop it in that little comment section and we'll get as many questions answered as we can. And also please make sure to go in and answer the poll. So let's move on to the next part of this knowledge stream today. I'd like to welcome another Agile expert into the conversation, our very own CTO, and a very lucky to call him a friend of mine, Martin Mazur. Welcome, Martin. Good morning.
Thank you, Victoria. Good morning.
All good with you?
Yeah, I'm good. I just had listening to you, Joakim. It was a great presentation. Had tons of coffee, so I'm hyped up for the discussion today.
All right. Well, then I think we just kick it off straight away. What do you think? What do you two think?
Sure, go.
There's the spirit.
Go.
Okie dokes. Right, I'm going to kick it off with quite an open question, perhaps quite an easy one to lead in with. But when is it time to scale Agile? Boom.
Wow. It's always time. So yeah, I think that what we've seen the last decade, and it's accelerating all the time, is entering this digital age where software is eating the world, as someone famously said. Well, when software is eating the world, the methods and management frameworks associated with these big successful software companies is also starting to eat the world. And I think more and more companies are realizing this, and it's not that I think that all major companies either have started a lean agile transformation in some sense, or is seriously consider doing it. And it's just the problem is that in most cases not that they're lacking the understanding, but rather don't really know how to get there or what it means. So in that sense, I think it's if it's not already time for you, then you're probably behind the curve.
Martin,
I think,
anything to add?
what we've seen from I think the course we did with Joakim and this presentation, and also my own experience, is kind of that good Agile is messy. I mean, it's not this clear cut, one size fits all. This is going to work for all organizations. It's this journey of discovery that you go on, right? So if you don't know why you're scaling Agile, you probably shouldn't scale it. Like, you're probably fine where you are. And I've seen small teams or handfuls of teams trying to go like, all right, we need to scale this. We need a better framework. And like, what's the pain point? Like, what's the problem? Why are you suffering? And if you're not, you probably don't need to scale that thing. I've also seen like some clients I've been working with where, they have a lot of smaller applications that all run different variations of Agile. And now they're thinking of, what's the management system we put on top of this? And the answer is probably you don't need to put a management system unless you're building like a Spotify or a Google or any other like huge enterprise one product application where you have these multiple teams that necessarily need to coordinate. You might be better off just working with the kind of small teams that you have going. So I think it's a classical consultant answer, depends. But I'm also going to steal one from Joakim, which he used in our course, which is the first rule of scaling Agile is don't scale Agile. I think that's brilliant. So I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let's assume that we do think we need to scale Agile. So what's the most important thing that we need to think about?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I said earlier, that this sense of urgency and this vision, and basically also what Martin was touching on. Why are we doing this in the first place? It's so easy to also get carried away with all the competition is doing it. So I one client that I worked with in an industry, they were saying, we've chosen to scale Agile using this framework. Why? Well, it's standard in our industry. Everyone else is doing it, so we need to be doing it as well. And I'm not sure that's necessarily true. And if you don't have a clear idea on what are you actually trying to do, what do you need to improve, it's probably just going to be, well, lipstick on a pig, really. Introducing a lot of new work practices and keep people busy in training and reorganizing things, but not really getting anywhere.
Yeah, I think also, one thing that I've noticed is that these two things seem to get mixed up, and it's the idea of becoming Agile and scaling Agile. And there's people trying to kind of become and scale at the same time. And that's probably more problematic or more challenging than just scaling, because the idea of agility, at least for me, has always been that, and Joakim touched on this in his presentation as well, agility is kind of a culture, right? So when you decide that, we want to be Agile, essentially what you're doing is you're taking the company culture, right, and you're putting Agile on top of it. And now you have a culture clash, right? So you have this culture integration that needs to happen. And culture integration is messy. Anybody that's been in like an M&A situation, or two companies integrating, or even two teams integrating, knows that, when two cultures come together, there's this whole norming, storming, forming, performing type of thing going on. And that takes time to settle in. So also, if you take external help, any external help worth its money is going to understand that this is a cultural transformation. The first thing they'll do is trying to understand what context they're operating in, what are the company values, how does this look, what's working, what's not working, before they try to just like smash Agile on top of that. If you're already in an Agile mindset, right, best way I've seen scale happen is over time, because there's this concept of the retrospective, right? It's not only for the team, it's also for the company. So if you are already agile, you're looking back and you go like, all right, these things are working, these things could improve. These things are working, these things could improve. Where we get into trouble is when people are in a hurry. And then you have these promises, the frameworks that we talked about, SAFe, 14 weeks and you're going to be scaled agile. That's a good value proposition. Like if you're in a management team and somebody goes and says like, in 14 weeks, I have you up and running with scaled agile, you go like, wow, that other consultant said it's going to be 4 years. And I think that's because, you fall into the trap of the prescriptive agile. The one we've seen with like, we're past criticizing Scrum now. I think everybody's, kind of understood where Scrum stands. But when we started using Scrum, there was this whole Scrum backlash, right? You're not using Scrum right. And then, Scrum destroyed our company. It becomes prescriptive. People become dogmatic about the method. And before you kind of find that balance, I think that's the issue. And I think that's where we're at with the whole scaling thing, right? It's fairly new. Like Agile at scale is fairly new. We've been battling for this from the software development side for years, and now that we have it, we honestly, most of us just don't know what to do with it. Now the executives are just coming knocking on the door and be like, all right, so like you've been talking Agile for 10 years. All right, I'm in. What do we do? And that's the problem. We don't have the answers, and in the Agile way, we just need to uncover better ways of delivering software. I think that's the key. So my rant basically is beware of anyone promising silver bullets and quick results. I don't believe in them, but that's just me. How
so
about
actually,
you believe in silver bullets?
No, I don't believe in variables either. So maybe that's why. No, so you made me realize that around this cultural clash, I've seen actually a change the last 10 or 12 years. Like before I joined Spotify, when I worked with lean agile transformations, they were typically smaller back then. When you would start working agile way and introducing that, and people in management or on the business side of things got their eyes opened that okay, this means large cultural changes. This means changes in how we our governance, how leadership is supposed to act. Back in those days, that would mean the end of the Agile initiative. Typically, okay, let's squash this. It's because to them, IT was mainly a cost center. That's why they wanted to outsource it. So it would almost be like the people who sell us toilet paper, they say that we have to change because of they are changing. It's like, why would we change because IT is changing? The interesting thing that I see today is it starts in IT. We need IT to improve, and then they bring in maybe a SAFe or whatever, which starts to talk about this is a culture change, this is leadership change, and now instead of squashing it, I'm actually kind of surprised that they're like, okay, yeah, we probably need to change the culture. So there's definitely another openness and an understanding of for these changes than just 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, one of the first Agile teams I did was in a huge corporate environment, and the other reaction from management, other than squashing it, is isolating it. So the other thing about this was, when we did this team, I would say it's one of the best Agile teams I've done. We started running it, and we were really productive. We were doing really well. And we ran for, I think it was 9 months in, when I met the manager, and they actually showed me the org chart with these processes. They had these planning and development and testing and release. And in the development, there was this small circle. I was like, what's that circle? And he's like, that's your team. And so what they basically did was, we were doing good stuff. So it was like, they just let us run with it, have our own culture, our own ways of working and everything, but kind of stuck it in the large model. So anything we were producing was not reaching any customers. It was not getting out in production anyway. The requirements we were being, that was trickling down, all our planning meetings, they were staged because it was all pre-planned 6 months ago anyway. So while we were thinking we were doing great work and we were truly agile, the whole system around us was basically just not agile. And I think that's what corporate has, or like the big corporations have kind of woken up to, is like, wait a second. If you look at lean production, if you look at all these things, like what we're doing is we're not responding to change. Market is moving insanely fast. So how can we get on board with that? How can we listen to our customers and get that into the product quicker? And there already is an answer to this question. And the second part is then we're warehousing all of these features because we're waiting for this big release. And that's a remnant from when we used to ship compact discs to our clients to install on their servers. Now that we have, everything is online and we have push to production and all these things, like we're not bound by that anymore. And, that's the change we're slowly seeing. My biggest issue is that we as an Agile community probably didn't act quick enough because have been on both sides of the spectrum. There's also this not understanding for what like top tier management in big corporations goes through, which means that some of the suggestions coming from Agile are underdimensioned or built on the wrong premises because they're built from the ground up. And of course, it's hard to get acceptance for an idea when you know so much more. So I think the Agile community getting quicker on reading more management literature, getting quicker on understanding budgeting, getting quicker on understanding how companies and stocks and quarterly reports and everything works to understand the drivers behind companies could have created a better Agile for today, and I think that's the process we're in right now, where the business really meets agility. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good ride.
All right, before we carry on getting far too general, because I think we're going to come back to that in just a minute. And also, when you mentioned CDs, I had this wave of nostalgia just filtering through my body, and it made me feel both very young and very old at the same time. I'm just going to bring it back a little bit more reference to what Joakim was talking about the specific Spotify model. And I'd just like to know, what's the contrast between the Spotify model and other successful scaling models that we've seen?
Well, I think that to start with, the Spotify model is one company who developed or grew its own approach to Agile scale. And why we did that at the time was that there were no scale Agile frameworks there, really. We grew that at the same time as SAFe started to be shaped. And for Spotify, it was always... we were really agile. We had people empowered and making decisions and working together. There was no separation of business on one side in IT. It was all product development. How can we get this product out? So it was more growing in a way to make sure that we can stay fast and keep having people empowered and feel this relatedness, the whole idea that I mentioned with the tribe. So it was rather avoiding falling into these traditional constructs and traps. And SAFe, for instance, and others, it's more, we already have big organizations. We've started using Agile teams and we're not sure how to take this big step. So it's kind of starting from the other end. How can we scale things down in a sense? How can we break these things up? And the big change, the biggest difference to me between SAFe, and let's use that as an example because that's the biggest scaling framework. It's much more geared towards how can we get the development factory to work. We have so much legacy. We have project teams with scattered people all over the world. How can we just get people together and start developing? And with the assumption that we still want to keep delivering big projects, we still have kind of a separation of business and IT. But how can we manage that? How can we get more predictability with these big PI planning events, and so we can make better forecasts to fit into our big enterprise plans? While Spotify is much more, let's go immediately to customer focus and see how can we bring the customer at the forefront of this. How can we really integrate business and IT immediately by having product owners from the business in the squads, product owners at the tribe level. So it's SAFe kind of has that as a promise in the future. Yes, we'll get there, but I don't see in a transformation context. I don't see why you can't go for that day one. And also when you talk to people who have chosen the Spotify model, many of them felt that SAFe was kind of more of the same that we already had. It doesn't feel like a big change. So what is really changing, especially if you have had the Agile teams working for quite some time, while Spotify actually challenged that, it says that no, a virtual organization is not enough. You have to challenge the way you're doing budgeting, challenge the way you're doing portfolio management, and also maybe challenge the organization in the sense that build tribes where engineering managers actually report to the tribe lead, product owners report to the product owner's tribe lead. SAFe has a false promise in a sense there that, you don't have to change anything. You just build a virtual organization on top of your siloed hierarchy, and you get the best of both worlds. No, you're probably going to get a lot of still being stuck in budget puzzles and figuring things out. And if we need a more front-end developer, it's not our own decision. We need to ask the organization that owns front-end developers for more. So it's creating a false promise that you won't have to change that much when what you really need is change. And Spotify model is a little bit more clear on that.
Okay, well, before I take another question, I'm just going to remind you all that if you have any questions coming up here, and I'm sure there's quite a few in your brains, don't be shy, pop them into that comments box and we'll get them all answered as fast as we can. So coming back to one thing that you've spoken a lot about is culture, and the culture at Spotify in particular. It seems like the Spotify model was built on the culture of Agile, and in a different context, how would you establish that culture?
Oh, wow. There's one thing is how Spotify did it, but that might not be so informative. I mean, we had luck in having a millennial CEO and founder. Many people who started came out of the open source community, which meant that you solve problems for yourself, really. A lot of open source is around that. Let's get something that works up and running. While many other developers could come from a background, let's consider all the edge cases and polish it and come up with the perfect solution, which might lead to a different kind of culture. So we had a lot of those things for free. But if you want to change culture in an organization, it might be counterintuitive, but you first have to change the way you work. Then actually culture will follow. Which doesn't mean that you should be talking a lot about culture and principles and values. That's needed too, but that alone is not going to change anything. Even if you make a board decision that our culture is now going to be more transparent, okay, so what's really going to change? But actually starting to share things more transparently, that's what's going to shift your culture. So if you want more empowerment, for instance, if you want more autonomy, it's about giving the tools and the work practices to the teams to actually be able to do that. Moving from opinions to data, for instance. If we are able to put the teams in contact with a customer every 2 weeks or even more often, if we are able to put them in touch with the data that we are able to collect, if we can do some telemetry and get data from how people are using the product, if we can get someone, if you have internal customers, if you can get someone, a subject matter expert in the team who can tell us what's happening, so to create this direct line of sight to the user and customer. That's both going to be highly engaging for the team and also going to enable autonomy, because now you have the possibility, the opportunity to seek out the answers. Are we building the right thing? Is this doing the thing? And that's what's going to ultimately shift culture. Maybe people in the beginning will be hesitant, they won't come up with a lot of initiatives and ideas, but the more you put them in front of data and actual feedback and so on, and they start realizing that we can actually have opinions, we should have opinions. Also, that's just one part of it, one example of actually changing the way we work is going to lead to culture.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I mean, deliberate culture change. One thing that's good, if anybody watching this is just starting a team or starting a company, like, you can design culture. I think that's one of the strong points we did with the 1337 is we kind of from the start decided these are the things that we value, and then continued investing in that, because it's not just a sticker on the wall, it's something you live. And for me, agility is it's a lot, but the acid test is kind of the Agile manifesto, right? If you read that manifesto and you think about your organization and you kind of can see which one of the values is really not here, then you know where to start working, right? So if it's individuals and interactions over process and tools, or working software is not the primary measurement of success, or whatever it is that you kind of feel like, there's something here, you have something to start working with. And then it also depends on if you're doing it as a grassroots movement or if you have management with you. Because if management brought you in to do the change, if you're an external consultant, your life is easier. If this is a grassroots movement, your life is immediately a lot harder, because you're going to have all these pushbacks. In both scenarios, what you need to figure out is, what are people afraid of? So in a culture change, when we try to change a culture, when we try to do something, you discover, all right, working software is not the primary measure of success in our company. Why not? And eventually you're going to get to somebody that's afraid of something. Like, we're measuring this because of this, or we're doing it like this because of this. And now you can break that fear. And when you can break that fear, you can move beyond that thing, and you can actually start getting the ball rolling. A lot of people with a lot of influence are afraid of a lot of stuff. And if we can't start, calming that situation down and helping people, we will probably get any type of culture change squashed at some point. And it can be squashed from the top, or it can be squashed from the bottom. Culture change is hard. Everybody needs to be on board with it.
I just want to add that there's a lot of research suggesting that what senior management does, and this might not come as a surprise to you, is super important. If they start embodying a different way of doing things, and you see that they actually mean business, they are changing, they are doing things differently. If for instance, if you want to have a culture where people are more engaged and autonomous and empowered and are making decisions and contributing to the direction of the company, well, if you then say, okay, this is what we want, and I now invite you all to an event where you can shape this. What should our new values be? What should our culture be? What should our important behaviors be? Help us co-create these things, and because it's all about you. That's one very strong signal. Okay, we mean business with this. If you're on the other hand is saying that we're going to have a new culture of empowerment and autonomy, and we have designed it for you at the top, and now you're supposed to implement it. And if you have questions, or if you challenge it, you're a change resistant, and we have to make sure that you buy into our thing, because it's not our thing is not wrong. It's you that are wrong, and we need to convert you. Then you're gonna end up with a very different culture than the one you're suggesting. But I like with ING, for instance, the big Dutch bank that did a huge Spotify transformation that's been very talked about. The executive team started doing things like, for instance, when someone presented to the executive team, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation in a big company, but it's there's always you're going to get 1 hour between these times, and then you show up, you will have to sit and wait in a room, and then there's the time shrinks, and it's pretty bad customer experience, so to speak. So they started actually evaluating and interviewing people after you presented with the executive team. You would be able to give them feedback on what was the experience like, and when they started reading that in the executive team, they're like, "Whoa, we're really shitty people. We're actually horrendous. We need to change." And that showed how they actually actively started asking for feedback from their co-workers and changed. So that's a very, very good example and change culture.
Leadership.
Sorry, go.
Leadership is definitely a big part of it. I just want to tack on to one thing you said. I think it's interesting how kind of culture shapes from two ends, right? If you have a culture you enjoy, at some point, there might be people in the organization that don't enjoy the same culture. And that's also a signal that, that a specific culture is not for everyone. So while you can shape a culture with the team, you might end up with a culture that is not for some people, and you have to be okay with people leaving because of the culture, if that's the culture you want. I think that's something a lot of people who try to do culture, organizations try to do culture right, fail at. They try to do this all-inclusive culture, and like a good culture has strong opinions. It's per definition not going to be all-inclusive.
I'm glad you brought that part up. I think it's really important. Two of the points that you both touched on was about how it shouldn't just be words that are written on a wall, and it should come from leaders, and they should live these values. Really interesting stuff. I love getting into these conversations about culture, but I think we need to bring it back a little bit here and talk about this whole way of working with scaling agility. It's not exactly a new concept. So why are we seeing an increased focus on it sort of now and in recent years, do we think? Don't all jump in at once.
No, I think it goes back to the software is eating the world, and how that's it's much more common. So a friend of mine, Steve Denning, author of a few Agile books and writer for Forbes, he used to go to these Drucker management conferences, which is the Davos of management thinking, whatever that means to the generation that's listening to me. I don't know, but it's a very really important management conference. And 10 years ago, he started saying, "Oh, we should look at this Agile thing. What's happening in Agile?" He was starting to see what's happening in Google, Facebook, all these companies. A very different approach. Still at that time, a little bit what I hinted before was that they were like, what IT is doing in the basement has very little to do. I don't think we can learn anything from what they're doing. It's like we've been doing this on the business side for a century. Yeah, maybe that's part of the problem, by the way. And they didn't feel that they could learn anything. But if you look at from the year 2000 to now 2020, I mean this big five, what is it? Google, Apple, Facebook, Netflix, maybe not Netflix, Microsoft. Their profit, if you take their profit the last year and put it together, it's bigger than Japan's gross domestic product. It's like insane how big and successful these companies are, and to ignore what's happening within those companies. Amazon is also a company that's using a lot of Agile principles. To ignore that, you can't. It's impossible to do that anymore. And seeing now that also, for instance, Telenor, their customer service, it's not competing just with other telcos. They're competing with the experience people have from Google, Netflix, Spotify. And they are able to move at such a faster rate than they are. So I think that a lot of companies are realizing that if we're not changing and changing fast, we're going to be relics in this big change that's happening. So I think that's one main reason.
Yeah, I mean, definitely exactly this. It's, we're moving into a reality where every company is a digital company. It's not, we're not even talking about digital being a department. Like the whole company is changing, the whole business model is changing. And if you're not with that program, you're going to be up for a Kodak moment, saying we're a paper and chemicals company until you're not a company at all. And I think that's kind of the realization a lot of organizations, a lot of companies have woken up to, being like, we used to sell this, but now we're selling this, and that also puts software development or digital in the spotlight. And what happens then is basically something that used to be this thing we did so we could feel better at work, right? Because that's how I start with Agile. Like, the way we're working, it's not working out for us. We're not feeling good at work. Like, what can we do to make it better? Suddenly becomes business critical. And now you have all eyes on you, and you go like, all right, so this Scrum thing, how do we do this in a bigger team? And I'm just going to circle back to this because I think this is such an important point. I think this is where we messed up. When we got that question, we were like, we don't know, like TDD and stuff. And in the question about, how do you do Agile budgeting? How do you organize, bigger companies? How do you do, we didn't have any answers for this for many years in the Agile community. There were answers like beyond budgeting and other types of methodologies, but we just didn't need that knowledge because we were so focused on delivering the software and not delivering the business. So this is where all these scaled Agile things started taking shape. And I think now we're just in the cross section where we're kind of meeting the grassroots Agile and the scaled Agile approaches, and we're trying to figure out, what works, what doesn't work. So in a sense, business and digital is closer together than ever before. It's super exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, sorry, go. Carry on.
It used to be the case actually not that long ago that you could have a successful product that started taking off, and then started building walls around it. There would be entrance costs to a market of manufacturing and so on that are pretty steep, so it's not so easy for a competitor to just start competing with you. You could pretty soon leverage economies of scale and efficiency through building up this big organization and have some experience, and you can keep competitors at bay for a very long time. And it would be hard for others to get into that market. And now when most of an organization's business value is in executing software, which is really, really easy and fast, especially if you're not tied up in old legacy systems. The Barclays, a bank that's been around for 300 years and had 50,000 employees, saw themselves being outrun in China by a chat company that started financing services and had 100 people doing the development that they had thousands and thousands of developers, and they just outpaced them in any aspect. So that's also, speed is change is changing so much faster these days.
Absolutely. Well, I've got one more question here. I'm just going to remind everyone, if you've got anything that you want to ask these two experts, then just whack it in there now. And I've got one more question, then we're actually going to move on to some of the questions that have been flying in from our audience. And so I think if we look at everything that we've spoken about so far, and we begin to look a little bit into the future, and we're seeing that our reality right now is we're living in a distributed reality, going through this change that the world's seen over the past year and a half. So what's the future for Agile practices? How are we going to see this new distributed reality affect Agile and the Agile practices? Crystal balls out now, please.
Yeah, I think that so Agile has been very focused in its practices and team practices and so on this co-location, people sitting close to each other, having this big visible radiators, information radiators. If you put it in a spreadsheet, it's suddenly an information refrigerator. You have to go there and look at it. It's not at all radiating information. And all of this is of course becoming a really big challenge in this distributed way of working. And I think that at Spotify we were really, even though we were a distributed company and had lots of infrastructure and video and Chrome and Chromecasted everything, like, because we had different offices in different cities, we were still really clear, no co-location trumps almost everything. If we can, we need to be co-located. You weren't even allowed to work from home at Spotify for very long, because we need to be in the office collaborating, right? Now Spotify has recently published that they have a work from anywhere policy, so you can sit wherever. I'm not sure what's happening in this space, but if you look at successful open source projects, where people really have been able to rally around a project and deliver amazing things without ever seeing each other or ever sitting next to each other. I think even old farts as myself, they have to open up to, okay, maybe something else is possible. Maybe we need to let go of this co-location and thing. And an old Spotify colleague of mine actually used this super good quote to highlight that. The scene in Batman: The Dark Knight Rises. Those of you who have seen that, where Bane says, "Oh, you think darkness is your ally, but you merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see light until I was already a man. By then, it was nothing to me but blinding." I think that's the thing with the millennials and the younger generations. I probably can't even understand. My teen daughters are they can't do anything, watch a movie, nothing without constantly also be connected and Googling things, chatting with friends. And to me, it's like you're not focusing on the movie. To them, it's I'm focusing on the movie more than you are, because I'm simultaneously checking things, talking about it with my friends, so that's I don't have a really crystal ball answer for you, but the crystal balls really poses that question to me. This is going to change things even more and even more dramatically than what we've seen so far, but I'm just not sure yet how.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's the biggest thing to take away. Things will change. There's no going back to the way it used to be. But I usually, when I get this question, I think about, what is agility? What is it we're really trying to do? And I mean, the first thing the Agile Manifesto says is that we are uncovering ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. And this whole, uncovering better ways of building software, I think, is kind of the key to this puzzle. And I've been a part of the Agile community for a long time, and it's a community that is very pragmatic, except when it's dogmatic. So there are these kind of truths in the community that you don't want to challenge, like co-location, information radiators, all these things. And everybody's going to have to discuss everything unless you talk about any of these specific tools, because then the tools become really important. So what I see right now is, we're going to move into a era where I think the work will have to decide. I think we need to flip back to kind of, what does the work require of me? Because I do agree with this fully remote environment we've been living in for almost 1.5 years now. There are things that are not suited for doing that. Whilst I can see other things, such as personal productivity, go insanely up. So I don't believe that the pendulum should be at any end, but I do believe that there's this like holy middle ground at some point where you can be like, all right, so we need to do this creative thing. We need to be, we have divergent thinking, open-minded. Maybe we should meet. And then, we have this convergent thing. We need to deliver. We need to go into crunch mode. We need to write some code. We need to do things. And, maybe that's the one we're closing. And if we talk about, science has proven that people can't keep convergent and divergent thinking in their head at the same time. So splitting these up into different types of activities, doing them at different points in time, might actually create more productivity for us. And mind you that what we tried to solve with co-location and Agile was communication, was the communication gap. We talked about peripheral hearing, information radiators, visuals, and stuff like that. Technology has moved a lot in the last 20 years. So we now have other ways of communicating. This wouldn't have been possible when Agile was created. Not saying it's a replacement for meeting face-to-face, but we do have better tools. So I think, crystal ball or not crystal ball, I think, death of the conference room, definitely. Rebuild all conference room to creative spaces, more private offices. Probably, work from anywhere will be a factor, and still meet up for certain moments of the project. That's my predictions. So, let's save this video and see where we end up in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I just want to add also, it's tricky because Agile is cheating in a way. It's a moving target because it is continuously evolving. I mean, if you look at what Agile was in 2000, and now it's like it's generative leadership, intent-based leadership. It's lean Agile, the lean house, the Toyota thing, the DevOps movement, lean UX. It's been like incorporating everything that's been good and been working, that's happening, is now in the umbrella of Agile. I mean, that's one of the jokes with SAFe is, when you go through in the leading SAFe introduction, it's four core values. It's 4 Agile values, 12 Agile principles, 10 SAFe principles, the lean house with four pillars, 1 base and 1. It's like it's already 84 principles. So what comes next? Well, nothing is going to come next after Agile, because Agile is just going to consume every good thing and call it Agile.
No, I mean, definitely that. I think one of the things that somebody told me. I'm on the board of this education, and we were talking about it, and it's like, as soon as you put Agile in front of something, you already screw it up. Like, it's just good leadership. Like, it's not Agile. It's just good project management. It doesn't have to. So I think as soon as you you have to prefix something with Agile to make sure people understand what it is, you probably already screw it up, right? So and that's of course an extreme. I'm exaggerating it, but I think that the basic idea of this becomes that, coming back to where we started, it's a way of thinking, it's a culture. And the question when new things pop up, like video conferencing, work from anywhere, it's not whether it's Agile or not. That's a completely mute discussion that we shouldn't be having. Is it useful or not? Like, is it making our organization better, or is it making it worse? And in these types of chaotic environments, these tests are the only thing we can run. Try it out, see what happens, measure. And I think that's the core of agility. That's the whole Agile culture.
I think we've both been around long enough to remember that let's not call it Agile, and then maybe we can get away with it. And now it's the opposite. Let's call it Agile, then we'll get away with it. So we went 180 degrees.
Definitely.
Great stuff. Well, I'm going to start with some audience questions now, and I'm just going to apologize if you can hear any noise in the background, because the builders outside here that are working on the facade of this beautiful building have decided that 9:35 on a Monday morning is just the time to whack out those power tools. So enjoy the sound of the digging and the banging here in the background. So first question we've got in here from the audience is, where I work, we've had teams with missions. Some decided they knew better than our customers and therefore decided to build stuff that ultimately didn't sell well at all. How do you handle that?
So I would say that you have to have a way of working where you can, as soon as possible, test things, whether it is working for the customers or not. Then, if not, then you're basically back in, instead of the highest paid person's opinion, it's someone else's opinion that prioritizes, and then you've not really done the shift to mission-based teams, I would say, and at least not in the sense that I mean. If you can't get actual concrete evidence from customers and users that proves or disproves your hypothesis, then you're still going to be stuck in I think, you think, we think, and you won't know. You're just replacing perhaps management with the informally strongest voice in the team, or do whatever you want, which is not at all the same as having that customer focus. Not sure how that helps though, but
I think it kind of depends what actually happened. Without having the context, it's hard to say. But one of the patterns I've seen is that you're actually not communicating clearly enough with the customer. So when the customer tells you what features they want, the natural reactions of the team is to go do something else. But the real reaction should have been to ask the customer what problem they're dealing with, because that would allow the team to kind of design the features that the team feels is correctly. Often the customer is going to ask for the wrong feature, but the problem they have is a real problem. So this can be one way of kind of where it might have went wrong, that the customer suggested a feature, the team says, no, we don't think that's really what you want. They try to deduce the problem, deduce the wrong problem, and ended up with the wrong solution. So I think actually trying to drill down into that, like what's the actual issue you're dealing with, is very helpful. And the second part is, fine, they did it. That happened once. Will they do it again? Will they learn from that mistake? Will they learn from that failure? That's the real test, right? It's okay. Like if they did it once, they realize they did it. It's okay. That's how we learn. Just don't do it again. Hopefully, the iterations are short enough, so the work wasted wasn't huge.
And to be honest, I just want to make it clear that while talking to the customer, as I've been proposing, is great, and showing things to the customers at demo can be great if you haven't done even that before. But I just want to make clear that that's also not enough. That it's your first step maybe, and you should keep doing it even once you progressed. But you also need to back it up with actual understanding of what's going on, because people are so bad at predicting their future behaviors and needs. Even if they say they want something, they might not end up using it anyway. Like ask everyone who buys a gym membership in January, like, are they using it still in February even? In March? So actually following up and measuring and seeing, are they using this feature that they wanted so badly? No, apparently not. So that's when we start learning that, okay, we should only do small experiments with small parts of the population and see if they actually use it before we invest big in actually rolling it out or building it for real.
Are you suggesting not everyone that buys a gym membership in January uses it?
That's what I've been told. I don't know. I would, I'm sure, if I bought one.
It looks quite cool in your wallet though when you open it up. Anyway, I'm going to get this question in now before they start with noise that sounds like the dentist and gives me a trigger warning. Not all people are the same. How do you slot in those who are more comfortable following a plan than being faced with a mission and the need to come up with a plan yourself? Makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the first time I've encountered that situation or question, but and the first one is a little bit. The first answer is a little bit crass, maybe, that I would say there might not be room for those people in a successful organization, but that doesn't mean that you need to let them go, because I find that when people say that or feel that way, then we have not been able to really capture how they could be involved and engaged in this. and maybe it's just the tools or the way that we're using to kind of create that engagement feels artificial or is not helping them. Maybe they have a fear of taking initiative, making decisions, because they've learned from previous workplaces that they would be punished if they do so. So they would rather have someone else do it. It can be comfortable to do that. Maybe they've not seen firsthand how nice it can be to be able to make your own choices and so on. And that's why at Spotify we would have a maximum number of 10 direct reports for any manager, and focus a lot on this servant leadership and developing people. Because I think more often than not, it's working with that person to be interested and engaged and making all these choices. Make it easier for them to cope with not having a plan and so on. And of course, it doesn't mean, this way of working doesn't mean that you shouldn't have plans, you shouldn't structure your work and so on. That's also, I just want to make clear that up. That's probably doing it wrong. You can still have these conversations and plans, but as the saying goes, planning is everything. The plan is useless. I think I'll stop there. That's basically my view.
I think this is one of my absolutely favorite questions. I love this question because this is one I learned firsthand when kind of clashing against classical or clashing with classical management techniques, because I think this is one that Agile leaders actually get wrong. I think this is because this is a leadership issue. So the idea of Agile leadership, Agile leaders, the coaching leader, the servant leader, it lends itself to a specific type of person, right? And that's a person that is high in motivation and high in skill. And of course, motivation is always good to have, but sometimes people just don't have the skill. And the coaching leadership is not really a good type of leadership for a person low in skill, because that won't progress that person. So this is, there's a model called situational leadership, right? Where you adapt your leadership style, the way you lead, into a situation or actually to a specific individual. Where you maybe together with the individual decide on, where are you on this scale? And if you're really low on the skill scale, what you actually need is you need plans. You need somebody to give you checklists, to check in with you, to go like, all right, this is how, you would do this specific thing. Do this 10 times and I'll be back after lunch and, see how it went. And then you talk through that. And then as you move up, like if any type of skill acquisition model, say the Dreyfus model, you get more and more independent because you gain more skill. And that's when motivation kicks in, and then when you can move to a coaching type style of leadership. So, I see a lot of organizations do this really, really badly. And just as Joakim said, they just go like, all right, maybe there's no place for you here. But it was actually just like low skill from that person and high motivation. And they couldn't really get that going, right? So I do believe that coaching leadership is not the end all be all. I think we need to adapt our leadership styles as leaders to fit whoever we're meeting in that situation. And I think this is one of the things where agility sometimes takes a lot of things for granted. So I think there's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for those of you who went to my course last week, this example of David Marquet, the US submarine captain of Turn Your Ship Around, is a great book, Intent-Based Leadership. You can Google the video Greatness and David Marquet, absolutely amazing. He had this situation on the submarine where a junior person, a chef, came to him and said, hey, Captain, it says that we're going to do chicken with rice on Wednesday. Yes. Well, it doesn't say if it should be white rice or brown rice. Okay, apparently a very low-skilled person who don't feel confident making these choices, would rather have someone tell him. Should I tell him to use white or brown rice? Or should I just, be agile or coaching that you choose, you're empowered? Well, neither. Most people default, yeah, you can choose. But what he did was, what criteria do you need to make a decision whether it's white or brown rice? let's work together to understand how you can make this choice yourself. And then he's actually developing the capability with that individual, not leaving them in the uncertain, oh, I'm to choose, and maybe if I choose wrong and I have no idea. So that was what it means to be developing leaders.
I need to jump in there and continue kind of the cooking example, because it's one of the examples I usually use when I try to have this conversation. So imagine you're trying to teach somebody to cook, and you just put a bunch of ingredients on the table, and you go like, all right, you make something, and then we'll retrospect and see how it went. That's usually not a very constructive way to teach someone. What you might want to do is actually give that person a recipe. And the next step is give them the recipe, but not all the ingredients, and see if they can figure out substitution and so on and so forth. And then eventually, you'll get to a professional chef level where you can just be like, go see what's in the fridge and cook something. And ideally, at some point, you probably don't even need to tell them that you need food. They'll just kind of figure it out and start cooking.
Okay, I'm very hungry now. Thanks for that. Are there any suggestions on how to grow a high sense of autonomy when there are non-negotiable external requirements that will dictate some of the team's work?
So my first question would be to challenge, are there really? Because a lot of these non-negotiable requirements, external requirements that I learn of is something we unfortunately as an organization negotiated ourselves into because of the way we do work. So I would kind of challenge that one more time and see if that's really okay. It could be for the team that's a fact, but maybe it's because of the how the organization is set up, and then I would try to change that. Other than that, it's there must be different ways of approaching those non-negotiable requirements. There are different ways to come up with solutions. So you can still have autonomy. Autonomy doesn't mean necessarily that you're free to do whatever you want all the time. It's that you're free to act using all your capabilities towards a collective good or collective goal that you have. And there will always be constraints and boundaries that you have to navigate. But sometimes that's used as an excuse. We have these commitments, so we can't really, let people decide. Well, there are probably tons of things that you can still decide about. And in the past also, when I've been, depending on how non-negotiable these requirements are, once you start interfacing with the people who have these requirements, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, there can be ways to loosen this up, and maybe there are ways that we can work around this, or that we can actually collaborate to change some of the things. Given that with the technology we have and the skills we have, there might be a simpler or cheaper or better way to solving these than what someone has done. But then again, there are circumstances when there is just one way to do the job, and it has to be done this way. Okay. Autonomy will have to wait for another assignment or another day. Or it might be autonomy in terms of who do I do the work with, when do I do the work, where do I do the work, which can also be, if not necessarily the same for creativity and innovation, it can still be good for motivation and engagement.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely the definition of autonomy that Joakim talks about, I think is key here. There's always constraints and boundaries. The important thing to understand is what are those and why do they exist? Because when you know what those are and why they exist, you can probably figure out good ways to working around them. The productive way is not to throw your hands up and say like, I can't work in this environment because of these constraints. Somebody put them there, and somebody put them there for a reason. That reason may still be valid, or it might not be valid, but it's up to you as an autonomous team to figure that out, right? Otherwise, you're just having this victim mindset, right? I'm the victim. I have all these constraints. I can't do anything, and that's not a productive place to be. Absolutely.
Well, we've got 10 minutes to go here and 2 questions, so I think this is going to time out quite nicely. So, penultimate question. Oh, did you say something? No, it's just my builder friends outside. Penultimate question here then. How should other tribes and entities that are disconnected from value streams be organized, such as core systems or more enabling teams?
Well, it depends, is the consultant's answer then. What does it depend on? I can give you an example on how Spotify would approach it. We had enabling tribes in the shape of one was infrastructure and operations, which would be kind of a self-service organization. So we would view it the way that they are here to help the team help themselves. So it's probably not a good idea that every team writes a system to handle saving data for 100 million users. It would be great if you could put that in one place. And the same with the A/B testing frameworks, continuous integration environments, these developer app productivity tools, so on. And I think one key here is to make that organization truly customer focused with regards to the internal customer. So at Spotify, product owners and developers from the infrastructure operations tribes would meet regularly. They would invite people to lunches, go and see every squad, really listening, try to understand what they were doing. When they were going around helping people with continuous integration in the early days, with Team City as they had chosen, and met a squad that's doing Jenkins, they didn't say, oh no, you have to follow in line and use Team City. They would try to be open on, okay, is there any way we can fit in and support Jenkins? Or if not, can we make it so pleasant and enjoyable to use Team City that you would willingly give up your autonomy? And I think it's not uncommon when you have a larger organization that you would have entire tribes devoted to these more enabling things. But I would put a word of caution is to try and not organize in a way that makes all other tribes dependent on this one. So it's an enabling tribe that's supposed to support you and create platforms, APIs, tools, and so on. If you find yourself in a situation where almost every user or customer-facing team needs to have development done from this tribe in order to do anything, you're probably doing it wrong. If you're kind of set up in that way, then I would suggest, like Spotify do, and have a collective code ownership or internal open source model, as we called it, so that you can actually change codes in systems that you don't own yourself, and use code reviews and support in able to do that.
Yeah, I think that self-service or service model is interesting. One successful implementation of this, or interesting implementation, both successful and interesting, I've seen is one that was borrowed from the NSA actually. So the way stuff works in the NSA is that there's a bunch of units that actually don't have budget themselves, so they're dependent on getting internal customers, because that's the only way they can sustain their unit. So they're like this micro internal company, and anybody and the other units that have budget can source either from those internal entities or from other external contractors. So the only way for these internal units and entities to survive is to be the better choice, actually, to be a better choice, and that also puts requirements and pressure and innovation and all of these things in the minds of the service function, because now they actually have a client that they need to care about and keep and maintain and ask, what do you need? How can we do better? And it's a good way of keeping those functions on their toes as well, and not just slipping back to whatever, you have to use us, right? So I think that's an interesting model that I've seen succeed.
Yeah, I can say there's a good article actually on the Scale Ladder Framework website on organizing Agile teams and Agile release trains, team topologies at scale, where they draw inspiration from Matthew Skelton's and Manuel Pay's book, Team Topologies, to reason around different types of setups with regards to both teams and tribes with enabling enabling tribes or trains. Sorry, but it's the same. I'll post it here in the chat. Maybe you can distribute the link.
Fantastic, thank you. Right then, last question. I think it's going to round us up nicely. By giving more responsibility of lifecycle management towards teams and developers, removing the protective layer, is there not a risk that they will get less time for actual development? What do we think?
So this is maybe this is a question for you, Martin. You're closer to the tech than I am, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I don't think it's a tech question. I think it's us reframing what actual development means. You know, your job is not to write code. Your job is to deliver working software, right? And working software is software that's in production and supplying features and functions to a client. It's not code you checked into Git. And this is something, you know, I'm adamant about changing that type of culture, because, you know, we as software professionals need to go into a more T-shaped persona where we start caring about users, we start caring about ways of working, about the code, about the security, scalability. There's so many other things we need to start caring about. It doesn't mean that we're not allowed to be experts or niche in something. It just means that we need to start caring about other things. One of the things that usually ticks me off the most is, you know, I'm going to so many meetings, so I don't have time to do actual work. The fact is that those meetings might be your actual work. Like it's not divided that way. It doesn't work that way. It's true that there might be too many meetings, but, you know, don't disregard that as not being real work. I think that's a big issue we have inside of that kind of software professional realm. So, you know, I think with the new generations, it's time to get with the program if you want to stay relevant as a software professional. All these things, you know, are now part of your job.
Yeah, and I would also suggest that if you are finding yourself spending a lot of time in those lifecycle management things, then probably your enabling tribes or arts aren't doing their job in supplying you with the tools, platforms, infrastructure that should make this easy. And releasing should be a non-event if you're successful in DevOps and a lean agile setup.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Words to live by at the end there. Do your job. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today. Thank you very much, Joakim, both for the fantastic Evolve workshop that you held for some of our very lucky colleagues here. And also, Martin, thank you very much for joining us on this wonderful Monday morning to really kick off this week in style. You'll be able to catch this talk again, along with the other knowledge gatherings that we've held, on our YouTube channel a little bit later. We'll get it up there for you if you want to rewatch it and get some more information on scaling Agile. This week, we've got another stream coming your way on Thursday. We've got Matej joining us about his data engineering journey on how he used raw data to make better decisions. So that will be on Thursday at 12 o'clock. So that one will just be an hour over your lunch break. So you can grab yourself a sandwich and listen to Matej telling you some things about his data engineering journey. Apart from that, thank you very much for joining us today. And I wish you a very, very fantastic week and a very happy end of May. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.